This is the Orvis SSR disc, and it's Orvis's dedicated reel for spey and switch rods. And today, I'm here to review it. Swing, step, repeat. That's what SSR stands for. And that's probably what you're going to be doing if you're interested in this reel. That's right, this is Orvis's dedicated reel for spey rods and switch rods. This reel is based loosely on the old Hydros. So it's got that same drag that we actually really like, but they've made some really significant modifications to make this reel better for spey and switch applications. And we're going to talk about those changes as we make our way through the 5 key factors. And number 1 is drag. And like I mentioned earlier, the drag on this SSR disc is, you guessed it, a disc drag, and it's loosely based on the old Hydros disc drag. The Hydros has always been a really high-performing reel at its price point, and this reel is no different. You're getting a really smooth, powerful drag at a really fairly reasonable price. Although the price on this SSR is definitely a little bit higher than the old Hydros was. This SSR size 4 has just a hair under 3 turns of drag, and in that you're going to go from 0 to really, really strong. I can solidly say that this reel has way more drag than you'll ever need for salmon and steelhead fishing. And while this reel is clearly designed for freshwater use, it is technically a sealed drag. There is an O-ring there, although based on the design, we wouldn't recommend lots and lots of saltwater use. It's just not going to be as sealed as the Nautiluses and Hatches of the world. But now let's move on to the spool. We've got a 3.6 inch max diameter, a nice narrow 1.1 inch width, and a fairly small 1.5 inch arbor. You might call it a mid arbor. This is probably one of the smallest mid arbors I've actually ever seen. It's just a hair bigger than a traditional arbor. However, when you pack this reel with lots of backing and a running line, you're going to get about 8.5 inches per turn of retrieval, which is actually not too bad. Of course, if that Atlantic salmon takes you really deep into your backing, you're going to get nowhere near that performance. In fact, I definitely would not want to be deep into my backing on this reel. Orvis has also sized these reels differently than normal reels. So this is the size 4, which is going to be kind of your 6, 7, 8 weight spey reel. Now, if you watched our video on how to choose a spey reel, and I highly recommend you do, we always say to go up a full reel size. However, Orvis has actually already done that math for you with the SSR. So when they say 6 to 8 weight for the SSR, they actually mean 6 to 8 weight spey reels. So with that in mind, this size 4 holds about 175 yards of backing with a 550 grain Skagit head. So again, you're probably not going to want to size up with the SSR. If you've got a 7 weight spey rod, get the 7 weight or size 4 SSR. Another change from the Hydros is going to be the weight. So they've added a lot of extra material here to increase that weight. Why, might you ask? Well, there's some schools of thought that a little bit more weight makes it a little bit more comfortable to hold your spey rod. Personally, I think the jury's still out on that, but it's easier to handle more weight on a reel with a 2-handed rod than it is on a single-hander. And this reel comes in at just a hair over 8.5 ounces, which is pretty heavy for an 8 weight and sort of moderately heavy for a 10 or 11 weight reel, which is what this really is. If you're a believer in balancing a rod, this is probably going to balance your rod reasonably well. Up next is going to be the sound, and this sounds a lot like the Orvis Hydros and a lot of the other lower priced Orvis reels. Let's have a listen. You'll probably notice there's no difference between the incoming and the outgoing, but that's okay, it's a really solid reel. And last but not least are the ergonomics, and they are totally fine on this SSR. We've got a drag knob that's a lot like the Hydros. It works. It's not my absolute favorite. I wish it were a little bit easier to grab, a little bit deeper, wider, however you want to describe it. And we've got a handle here that's not quite as wide as I would like. Definitely would prefer something beefier, but both of those are totally fine. They work really well. And I think this is probably as good a spot as any to talk about the full cage, which you'd expect for a dedicated 2-handed reel. And the purpose of this full cage is if you're using a mono running line, it won't slip between the frame and the spool, so it'll always stay exactly where you put it. The downside is it can take a little longer to set up and provide a little bit of frustration if you're not doing it right. Overall, I think this SSR disc provides a compelling package. It comes in the right sizes for two-handed angling. It's also marketed and sized for that line weight, which is either great for the beginning angler who doesn't understand it and hasn't watched our other videos, or really confusing for the rest of us and makes us really have to pay attention to make sure we're buying the right reel. But that said, you're getting a dedicated two-handed reel for a roughly $300 price point, and I think that's a solid package. I've always liked the low to mid-range Orvis reels, and this SSR disc is no exception. Tell us which reel you're fishing on your spey or switch rod by leaving us a comment in the box below. And don't forget, if you've got questions about this SSR or any spey reel, give us a call at 888-413-5211 or email us 24/7 at support@tridentflyfishing.com. I'm Ben. Thanks for watching.